Fasten your seatbelts, aviation enthusiasts. Welcome to the inaugural episode of From the Right Seat. I'm your host, Aaron Sloper, call sign SlowP. Today, come join me in my cockpit as I introduce myself and the podcast. Get ready to experience the world from a whole new altitude as we dive into my journey in aviation and learn what it takes to volunteer in the aviation community, fly warbirds, connect with old friends, and create new ones. Let's strap in and take flight.
Discover the skies like never before on From the Right Seat. Join your host, SlowP, an aircraft mechanic and B17 loadmaster for Texas Raiders, as we dive into captivating interviews with aviation's finest. Explore the thrilling careers of pilots, air traffic controllers, air show performers, and more, all from the unique perspective of the right seat. Get ready to take off into a world of passion, challenges, and the soaring dreams that define the aviation industry.
Hi there, everybody. My name is SlowP, and this is the From the Right Seat podcast. Thanks for joining me today on this podcast, and we're going to introduce what this podcast is going to be. First off, a little introduction and about myself. I'm a paramedic born and raised in upstate New York, somewhere between Watertown and Syracuse, a little town called Camden. I moved here about 2 years ago, and here is actually Houston area. I now live in North Houston, known as Conroe. I've been here, I just bought a house here not too long ago, just outside of Charlie X-Ray Oscar for the ICAO identifier. If anybody was curious, it's Conroe North Houston Airport, otherwise known as Lone Star Executive Airport. I've been interested in aviation since I was a little boy. We bought a computer, the very first computer that I remember my parents buying is a compact Rosario. Why it comes to mind, I have no idea. But along with that computer came Microsoft Flight Simulator 95, one of the very first Microsoft Flight Simulators that actually came out. I loved that thing. I couldn't take off from Meigs Field. I couldn't land at Meigs Field for a long time. I kept trying, using the arrow keys on the keyboard, and let me tell you what a feat it was. That sparked my interest in aviation. From there, I've always been a Boy Scout. I started in Cub Scouts in first grade and moved all the way up and eventually made Eagle in 2009. But in Boy Scouts, we have multiple different merit badges that we have to gather. Some are required and some are elective. And one of the elective ones that I chose was aviation, obviously. My first flight was in November 1333 Charlie. It's a Cessna 177 Cardinal. And that was in, I think, 2005, I do believe. Eventually, the superseding flight sims became available. We got a new computer, a more powerful computer, and 2006, 2007, I was able to be sponsored by my local EAA chapter to go to the EAA Air Academy in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which was a 10-day event that was in a lodge with people like Julie Cameron, Scott Cameron. Those are the two people that come to mind automatically. And I think there was about 38, maybe 45 other kids my age, age 16 and 17 at the time. And we were able to explore everything EAA. We went to the museum. We were able to get into the museum. They had the brand spanking new flight simulator. I think it was Flight Sim 10 that was coming out, and I was actually featured in, I think it was Airplane magazine. I can't remember the exact name right now off the top of my head, but they took my picture flying it. The guy that was one of the lead engineers on the flight simulator itself actually came in and talked to us kids and got to know us and invited a few of us over to our flight simulator lab that we had set up with yokes and throttle quadrants and big screens and headsets. And then they had a full cockpit simulator that was really cool. And we got to actually fly in the brand new Microsoft Flight Simulator at the time that nobody else has ever flown in. So that was pretty cool. progressed into later on in life. I graduated in 2009 from high school and went immediately into a Part 147, FAR Part 147 college for aviation maintenance. Aviation maintenance wasn't really my calling. I really wanted to fly. I really wanted to go into air traffic control of some sort. But it's being around planes. So I went to school. It was almost just about over a year. And you walked out the door having the requirements fulfilled for the 3 tests that you have to take for the FAA to become an airframe power plant technician. So that was in 2009, graduated in 2010, and back up a little bit, I joined the fire department, the volunteer fire department in 2009, which actually leads me down the path that I'm currently on right now as a paramedic, leading me into a career in emergency services. I did start flight school finally in 2019. Better late than never, right? You're never too old to go to flight school is what I hear all the time. Started flight school in 2019, and then mid-2020, I finished up I didn't finish up. I finished up where I was mid-21 because then I moved here to Houston. While I was in Houston, I discovered the Commemorative Air Force, which I joined the Gulf Coast Wing in Conroe and the Houston Wing in Katy. Technically Katy. The Gulf Coast Wing, of course, held the Texas Raiders, B17, one of the most famous B17s in the world, called Texas Raiders, and quickly dove into the volunteer life of the CAF, starting out as an ACM or additional crew member on some missions with the B17 and the SNJ. We have an SNJ-5 as well, or T6 Texan, commonly is known as a T6 Texan. And then quickly became a loadmaster. So my first flight in TR, it was July 1st, 2021. And we flew to Austin for the 4th of July celebration out there, and then flew back a few days later and did my first flyover in Houston, along with our brothers and sisters with the Houston Wing. We did a 4-ship formation over Houston somewhere, and that was pretty cool because one of my supervisors actually snapped me, sent me a video from the ground from his house where he lived and said, "Look what's flying over my house." And I quickly replied back with another video of, look whose house I'm flying over. And it was actually his house. That was pretty cool. Quickly moved into a into the loadmaster position. We ended up having a lot of interest in our ground school. A lot of people joining the early on in 2021 to be able to fly and train to be a loadmaster. My first loadmaster flight was in September of 2021 in Denver, Colorado. It just so happened to be I was a truck driver on that particular mission, towing around our 30-foot trailer that we had. And unfortunately for him, but fortunately for me, one of our crew members got sick and had to fly home early. So that left us with only one loadmaster for a bunch of flights that we had scheduled. So I quickly became a qualified loadmaster on the B17 Texas Raiders. I actually then flew the last civilian flight in Texas Raiders ever flown on November 12th, 2022, just mere hours before it was involved in the mid-air collision in wings over Dallas in Dallas, Texas, and crashed with our beloved crew on board. Since then, we've had a little bit of basically an uplift, a facelift, if you will, with the Gulf Coast Wing. I'm currently turning wrenches and cleaning and becoming what we're considering a crew chief now on our JRB or Twin Beach 18, and also the SNJ or our T6, like I said before, for the Gulf Coast Wing. And I'm also still working full-time as a paramedic for the local Houston Fire Department that I work for. I love attending these air shows. And if you know anything about me, if you know who I am, I love getting involved in any way possible, especially the behind the scenes of anything and everything. I love the logistics side of things. So that's kind of what brought me up with this podcast idea. I want to dive into not just safety of the aviation industry, not just, well, how do I become a pilot? How do I become an air traffic controller? How do I become an aircraft mechanic? There's plenty of podcasts. There's plenty of videos out on YouTube, stuff like that. There's not a lot of pilot interviews in the uniqueness of the aviation industry. There's a lot of pilot interviews out there, airline pilots, air show pilots, of course. There's one YouTuber that comes to mind. He's a friend of mine on Facebook. We're hopefully going to interview him at some point in the near future. His name is Eric Johnston. He interviews a lot of pilots with a lot of really, really cool aircraft. So that's behind the scenes as it gets right there. So I'd love to interview him. I've already talked to Emma Harrington from Scallywag Air here in Galveston. She flies a really cool airplane. She's a scenic tour guide and whatnot down there in Galveston. Who else do I want to get? Jim Ryan, he's one of our T6 pilots. He's got a very, very unique story. He's flown he's flown a lot of hours. Especially in the T6, commonly known as the Zero in our Tora, in the CAF, in the Commemorative Air Force. I'd like to talk to somebody like Kelly Hudson of Hudson Air Show. She's an air boss. She was our air boss in Galveston this couple weekends ago. I want to talk to our B17 pilots, a bunch of people. Our executive officer in the Gulf Coast wing, what it takes to create and tour with these airplanes with a bunch of volunteers. We don't get paid doing this with the SNJ and the Beach and the B17. We're all volunteers. We don't get a dime. We actually have to spend money to be a part of this and whatnot. So we're going to be going into that type of stuff with this podcast. If you'd like to share with me, best way to get at me is on Instagram or Facebook. You can search my name on Facebook. It's Aaron Sloper, AARON SLOPER. On Instagram, it's medic_SlowP, as SLOW And I also have a YouTube channel that is a SlowP as well. Suggestions, comments, questions, anything you'd like. I'm an open book. I'm brand new to this podcasting. I'm learning as I go here. I'm going to be hopefully publishing one episode a month and hopefully diving into a little bit more than that. Eventually, I'm going to have a visual portion of this podcast. We're going to showcase the planes that I'll be talking to, not just the planes, but the pilots of the planes that I'll be talking to. Hopefully the air bosses will let me near their tower when they're doing an air show. We have an air show coming up here in early September out in Midland, Texas. So look for me out there. I'll be with the Commemorative Air Force out there, and just shoot me a message, and I'll try my best to interact with everybody. I want to take this time to thank you for clicking on my podcast, for taking the time out of your day to listen to what I have to say. I think this is going to be a really cool way of getting information out there to kind of look at the backside of stuff, the stuff that I see as a volunteer with the Commemorative Air Force and being in these involved in these air shows and whatnot, and talk to some pretty unique people. So once again, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you know what to do. Follow, subscribe, hit that like button, share my podcast. Would love to see a great following here. Until next time, this is SlowP with From the Right Seat, signing off.
As we prepare for landing, remember to keep your dreams aloft. From one aviation enthusiast to another, this is From the Right Seat, signing off. Until our next flight, blue skies and tailwinds.